It was supposed to be an ordinary Tuesday morning. The parking lot of Kennedy's Supermart buzzed with the usual hum of grocery carts and morning chatter. But that day, the man behind the entire chain, John Kennedy, the multimillionaire founder known for his down-to-earth personality, decided to do something completely unexpected. Without telling anyone, he slipped onto one of his stores disguised in a simple baseball cap, faded jeans, and an old jacket. What he discovered inside that day would not only break his heart but also change the way he saw his company forever. Job had built Kennedy's Supermart from scratch, starting with a small convenience shop 20 years earlier. Over the years, his stores grew into a regional empire employing thousands. Yet, as success consumed more of his time, he began to feel a quiet distance between himself and the people who worked for him. Lately, he'd heard whispers that employees weren't as happy as they used to be. Determined to find out the truth for himself, he decided to go undercover. As he walked through the automatic doors, the smell of freshly baked bread and cleaning supplies greeted him. He nodded politely to customers and employees, pretending to be just another shopper. Everything seemed normal until he reached the checkout lanes. At the far register, a young cashier, no older than 22, was struggling to ring up a customer. Her hands trembled slightly, and her eyes were red and puffy. John paused. Something about her face, a mix of exhaustion and quiet pain, made him stop in his tracks. The line was moving slowly, and a few impatient customers grumbled under their breath. John noticed how no manager stepped on to help. Finally, the customer stormed off, muttering about slow service. The girl whispered a quiet "I'm sorry," her voice cracking. Then, as she turned to wipe her eyes, a single tear rolled down her cheek. John's heart sank. He could tell this wasn't just about one bad morning. This was something deeper. He approached gently, picking up a pack of gum from a nearby rack to give himself a reason to speak. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked softly. The cashier tried to smile, but it was shaky. "I'm fine," she whispered, avoiding eye contact. But her voice betrayed her. John didn't press. He paid for the gum and stepped aside, watching her for a few more minutes. She kept her head down, working quietly, but every few moments she sniffled or brushed away tears. When her shift ended, John followed her outside. She sat on the curb behind the store, her uniform slightly wrinkled, face buried in her hands. He walked up slowly and sat beside her. "Rough day?" he asked gently. She looked up, startled, then nodded. "You have no idea," she said. After a long pause, she added, "I just can't do it anymore. They cut my hours again. I'm barely paying my rent, my mom's sick, and I can't even afford her medication. I asked for help, but my manager told me to stop complaining or I'd lose my job." John's chest tightened. He had no idea this kind of thing was happening inside his own stores. "Have you talked to anyone higher up?" he asked, still pretending to be a regular customer. She laughed bitterly. "Who? The owners? They don't even know we exist." At that moment, something inside him broke. This wasn't the dream he had built. He had always imagined Kennedy's Supermart as a family, a place where employees felt valued. Yet here was a young woman, crushed by a system that bore his name. John took a deep breath and made a decision right then. "Listen," he said softly, "things might be changing soon. I can't promise anything, but I think someone's about to start paying attention." The girl gave him a puzzled look but nodded. She thanked him for listening and walked away, her shoulders still heavy with worry. The next morning, the store's management team was summoned to an emergency meeting. When John walked into the conference room without his disguise, silence fell over the group. The same managers who had ignored the cashier's pain sat frozen as he described everything he had seen. His voice trembled with controlled anger. "We built this company to care for people and not to break them," he said. "If one of our workers feels invisible, then I failed as a leader." Over the next few weeks, John personally visited every store in the region. He spoke with employees, asked about their lives, their struggles, and what needed to change. Pay raises were issued, health benefits were expanded. A new anonymous feedback program was launched so workers could speak freely. Most importantly, Managers were retrained to lead with empathy and not fear. And what about the cashier? Her name was Emily. John met her again a month later, this time officially. When he approached her register, she recognized him immediately, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Mr. Kennedy?" she gasped. He smiled. "I told you things were going to change." She burst into tears again, but this time they were tears of relief. The story spread quickly. Customers noticed happier staff, cleaner stores, and warmer service. But more than that, John Kennedy's story became a reminder to business owners everywhere that success means nothing if you forget the people who helped build it. In an emotional interview later, John summed it up perfectly. "I walked into my store that day thinking I'd find problems to fix. What I found instead was a lesson that leadership isn't about being in charge. It's about taking care of those who are." The video of that interview now circulates online, inspiring millions. And at Kennedy's Supermart, a small plaque now hangs near the front door. It reads, "People first, say always." Because sometimes, the most powerful change begins when a boss stops leading from the top and starts listening from the ground.